What did Stevens do if he didn't make ships? As late as 1667, when signing the oath asked of all Americans then to pledge allegiance to a new English king, Stevens is listed as ship carpenter. No wharf as such is known to have been his, though his descendants all come to play a leading part in the life of the harbor, especially his great-granddaughter Susanna, who became the mother of David and William Pierce. Stevens, though the leading citizen, is all over the cut. Was, then, the beach his private graving yard? Or did he build it all? The question has that power in it, that previously to coming to Gloucester this man had built the largest ship then known in England, and had been so desirable Spain's spies had sought to buy him, as they had earlier tried to John Hawkins. He would have lived a life as large as John Winthrop Jr. also refused, but even colonially Stevens dwindled. On the face of the record, I'm not sure he did. He lived here on the front of the city 40 years, until the day he ran away, aged 70, to wherever he did go. The question stays, what did he do? Did he contract vessels for out of Gloucester? What was shipbuilding, if Stevens did build, to bind his coming to the later act of Andrew Robinson, or Ingersolls and Sanders? It stays, that not after so much of a break in time, the type of vessel which changed fishing from that point on was built or invented in Gloucester. One would say not out of thin air. 1713, a schooner. 1693, Stevens dies, a shipbuilder. In those 20 years, the Ingersolls, the Sanders, and Robinson are continuing shipbuilding. Was Stevens not the head of something? The winning thing? Got hidden all the years? Balin shows Sharp Rise shipbuilding Gloucester. In 1706, its production amounted to 17.3% of the registered vessels, and 12.8% of the tonnage produced in that year by towns in the Bay Colony whose names were specified. But these are not her fishermen. Average tonnage is 46.4, the schooner, or then still called sloop or ketch. William Baker, 1962, is of the opinion what Robinson did do, 1713, was to fit the long-known two-masted fore and aft rig, the Dutch fore and mainmast combination, to a typical ketch hull, though Gloucester records 1702 show Nathaniel Sanders buying 12 trees, and they to be oak of the town, for the sloop he is building, and the same year, December, his brother Thomas building likewise a sloop for the Parsonses. 23 school and 16 Columbia, myrtle and violets and wood. The bottom backward of the sea grounds fish eat on, cod bread in winter in Massachusetts Bay, went offshore with spring, then Georges with winter again. Ice had dropped banks in the water, came of the bottom, fish orchards and gardens, tenements, messuages of the billions of generations of halibut paralleled settlers' lives, where fish go after in Danish cylinders now descend to measure paleontological times, when figureheads from East India brigantines sat in formal gardens so that old maids held their stomachers running as girls on Pierce Street. The Atlantic is a bottomed Pacific. I stand on Main Street like the diorite stone. July 17, 1961, as John Burke read the comics at the city council table saying, "When you guys have played long enough, there's no use of my wasting my time. Brains are not to be wasted. O Clolodoros." Letter 72, of love and hand-holding, sweet flowers and drinking waters, Hiltonses and Davises, the Garden of Anne, get back to, and Elizabeth Anita, Nasir Tusi, and where I fall, man is the fallen angel, and after Davis's swamp, Joshua Elwell sitting high in heaven. Bennett placed himself above 75 feet, Hilton above the trough between, on the edge of 75 too, and Samuel Davis on the height of the next rise, inside 125, 100 lying almost exactly the middle of the 600-foot distance between his and Hilton's houses, and Joshua Elwell the other rise on the Commons Road, or to the Woodlots, 1727, on the other side of the second trough, at 125 feet. Thus 3 hills, or hogbacks, and 2 brooks characterize the upper road, as against the lower, or Dogtown Road proper, where more rain, and the more evident presence of rock tumble gives the road and center its more character, moonscape and hell. The commons is garden and manor, ground rose and candles, shapes of spruce in bayberry garden. The View, July 29, 1961. The arms of Half Moon Beach, the legs of the cut. Descartes' soldier in a time of religious wars, a map of Dogtown Street, Cod Via, Sophia, fishermen's, racks, field, fishermen's in a field, 2 acres on which to dry like snow. Fences or tables at a lawn party. and ladies in boots who wear coifs to keep the sun from burning their necks. The Shoreman, Sunday, Sept. 10, 1961. In the interleaved almanacs for 1646 and 47 of Danforth, 1646 August, 1. The great pears ripe, 3. The long apples ripe, 12. Blackston's apples gathered, 15. Tankard apples gathered, Creighton pippins, 18. Long red apples gathered. 1647 July, 5. We began to cut the peas in the field. 14. We began to shear rye. Aug. 2. We mowed barley the same week we shear summer wheat. 7. The great pears gathered. September 15. The russitans gathered in Permains. 1648 May 26. Sown 1 peck of peas, the moon in the full. Observe how they prove. July 28. Summer apples gathered. 1646 July 20. Apricots ripe, as in footnote in Winthrop's journal. Ta mutura, meteor things, after the weather the meteors, Parsons's field. Thursday, September 14th, 1961. Alexander Baker, on the river bank above, Don Fudging, 1635 and 245, his age 28 to 38, and having by wife Elizabeth in those years 5 children, certainly the earliest known births Gloucester, except for Conant children, Woodbury, Balk, Stage Fort 1623-4 to 1626-7. Alexander, born Dun Fudging, Jan 15, 1635-6. The father and mother had arrived Boston in midsummer, aboard the Elizabeth and Anne, Captain Roger Cooper, with 2 first children, Eliz, age 3, and Christian, age 1, thus Alexander Baker, 2, possibly first child Gloucester among the persons of the incorporation of the town. Samuel, born January 16, 1637, 8, John, June 4, 1640, Joshua, from whose blood Ethan Allen, born Gloucester April 30th, 1642, just about day Endicott and Downing divided Gloucester up, and Hannah, September 29, 1644, sometime after her birth and before October 4th, 1645, date the mother and father are admitted Boston Church. The Bakers sold out at Dun Fudging to George Ingersoll from Salem. Ingersoll was still in Salem date his father's will, 1644. One is then a placement. A man and family was on the river just above the cut by 1635, and for 10 years. Also, probably his neighbor Stephen Streeter may have been there that early. In any case, as Goodman, Baker, and Streeter, the 2 get referred to in jointure the moment the town is found, and, curiously, their adjoining property is picked up from them by another pair equally holding together Gloucester for similar 10 years. Ingersoll and Keeney, though each leave Dun Fudging quickly for the harbor, each is possessed of a front on 4th Street and the water by 1647 December. Baker thus fixed his occupation of Cape during least known years between first settlement and incorporation as Osmond Dutch does the fisherman of the harbor front. His letter to wife Grace is from Cape Ann as naughta or sailor, July 18, 1639. And Abraham Robinson Thomas Ashley, whose property widow Babson bought up at his bankruptcy 1642, and Willem Brown show, via Shallop, as down there on the harbor before June 1641, and fishermen, specifically Thomas Letchford, notebook, page 406, add Willem Southmead or Southmaid as possessing Thompson Fishery Stage Duncan's Point, and therefore probably here as early as Dutch. And Thomas Millward and you have a handful who are the hidden handful from which fell the later life as though they were. Yes. Alexander, Baker, Goodman, Streeter, Osmond Dutch, William Southmaid, Thomas Wilmerd, Abraham Robinson, Thomas Ashley, William Brown. And definitely the ministerial student Thomas Rashley, traveling from the Divinity School, which Harvard College was, 1639, to hold service on Curtis Square, where are cuts between burial ground and hill, some more persons by Baker and Streeter, and other fishermen at head of Harbor Cove. Phil, harbor and river Phil, quiet. Few originally experiencing what we have each differently known. Like the mockingbird drove me hard, mocking me. If he mocks 28 different sorts of song, does a mockingbird not also mock the living person? Such curiosity must extend to looking in on the secrets of my cabinet, as well as the songs of his companion birds. Like the mockingbird last night in the slow coming in of the fog. A hot night such the creature a mockingbird is, loves heat and night. No mockingbird was here, 1635, 1639, 1907 was accidental visitor from the south, Mimas, polyglottos. But by 1920 had increased so, was becoming almost authority Dr. Townshend a resident, and at all times of the year F.B. Currier found them nesting at Newburyport in 1914, 4 young grew to full size. A second pair nested the same year. In 1915, 2 pairs also nested, one in 1916 and 2 in 1917. Of the Parsonses. I pick out the garden, the spring, the well of George Henry's division with his brother, the flat stone by a cherry tree. The garden Nathaniel's, deceased when Samuel Fisherman alias Coaster sold it to Ebenezer Tanner about 19 rods of land called the garden. 1732, Swilly to a plum tree, the well exactly opposite the Morris house, on the westerly side across from the middle of it. 1 acre of rocky ground where said Solomon Parsons' house stands and is bounded, excepting Mr. John Parsons' land where his well is, and there to bound by said land, as it is, in no way to infringe on said well privileges. Eleazar and wife Mary, May 1736-7. Mr. John Parsons' orchard Gravenstein, russets greening in northern spies in the complex westerly of the Mount Moore's house, with the well in the spring. The spring house in Leach's now winter home was summer camp. I went through today with Stewart and Mrs. Leach when Walter Cressy was selling water after he'd blown up the rock vein and dried the Parsons spring, to get his own a Cressy Strongway, Walter and Neil, and Bertha, living it up with a pony, a goat and sheep, a Labrador retriever, while acquiring more and more of the old Parsons woods, in ledge, fronting over the cut like Frontenac, bearing down. Greensward is a light of the fall of ground may not be the like of light coming off water, but land's fall causes feeling to run, as spirit does from sea and sky. She said at 10 in the morning she felt she was her mother, meaning my body was hers. I went to the mirror to look if it was me, and called her on the phone. She joshed me, and it was that night when she went with Josie Boone to see the Chocolate Soldier. She was struck by a taxi getting off the streetcar, and Josie was so scared she didn't find out what hospital they took her to. 12 hours of premonition, had not known before, and never knew again. Spring Lane leads from the end of the Morse house across the street in. 8 rods, Wiley, it says, from the house there, a line to begin for the rock to a great rock by the spring, which is about 10 poles, leaving the spring common, thence northwesternly, etc.